Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Saturday morning, and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest today is Cynthia Mckinney. She was the first African-American woman from Georgia elected in the House, and she is also, sorry. There's a tone thing here. All right, let me start that again. My special guest is Cynthia McKinney. She was the first African-American woman from Georgia elected to the House, and she was also a Green Party candidate for President of the United States. Welcome, Cynthia.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to come on. So Sabby Sabs has definitely got some great music as an intro. You know, we OGs like to think that the young people don't get the music, but you got it. I can say you got it, girl.
I had a before this intro, the one I had before was like a jazz fusion kind of like
I'm
beat.
actually learning jazz now. I have a friend who is a jazz musician, a bass player, upright bass. And so I'm getting into all of the history and all of the events and all of the personalities.
Mhm.
And then when you look at the videos from, back in the day of the greats, you can actually see like Miles Davis is fussing at Herbie Hancock, and I mean, it's just like on stage. It's all funny, but anyway, just so much history and so much to appreciate.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I listen to I have a jazz playlist on my Spotify. So when I'm at work, that's what I'm listening to. I got to. It's crazy in there. I gotta have some jazz to calm me down.
Yeah. So that's your chamomile tea, huh?
Yeah. So it's so much history between like John Coltrane and Miles Davis, and it just goes so far back. I encourage people to like look up jazz history because it also tells a lot about African American history in this country too.
That's right. And then, of course, you get the greats like Gil Scott-Heron, who has that song. Now, of course, it's going to escape me, but where he says, do you call on, John Coltrane? Do you call on Lady Day? They'll wash your troubles. They'll wash your troubles away. Yeah. And it's something about just good music. It really is timeless.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I have so many questions to ask you.
Okay, let's get started then. Let's roll.
So the theme this week, and this wasn't on purpose, but it's just how it ended up happening with everybody that came on. We've been talking about people leaving the Democratic Party.
Oh.
And I'm a part of the Fred Hampton Leftist Network, and we're against the duopoly, and we've really been trying to get people to advocate for direct action and mutual aid and participating in third parties.
Yes.
And I know that you left the Democratic Party, and I wanted to ask you, what was it for you that made you say, I got to get out of this. Enough is enough.
Well, I think it came in baby steps because I was raised at a time when it's the civil rights movement. And quite frankly, the Democrats were the regressive party. And you go back to the civil rights icons, and in the South, they couldn't participate in the Democratic Party primaries because the primaries were white voters only. And so I think that really steeped me in, well, let me look at what both parties have to offer. And in fact, the very first time that I was able to cast a vote in a presidential primary, I actually voted for John Anderson, who was the peace candidate who happened to be a Republican.
Mm.
And so but it's kind of hard. I've read academic studies about party identification and how people view their political party choice as, and sometimes it's not even a choice because it's intergenerational, is handed down generation from generation. They view that as like a tribe, and the labeling is indelible. But at some point, though, and in fact, I am remembering a Swedish study that was done where certain policies were put in a poll without saying whose ideas the policies were. And so then the academicians were able to identify what the popular policies were. Then they went back and they labeled the policies by political party. What happened was that people flipped when their political party was not the sponsor of the popular policy proposal. And that really showed them how deep the loyalty goes for political parties. So it's very difficult to get people to shed that identity. Although, as a student of leadership, what I am learned in my PhD studies is that we have different identities that we move in and out of all of the time. We're daughter, we're parent, we're worker, we have all of these different identities. Why can't we also move in and out of a political identity as well? Well, when I got elected to Congress, and then so first of all, my dad told me that it's a club and you're never going to be in it, sort of like echoing the George Carlin line. And it was a very tumultuous time when we got elected in the state legislature first. My dad and I served together. And the whole issue was the Georgia flag. What are we going to do with this Confederate battle flag that has been affixed to our state flag? It doesn't represent all of us. Well, now I have, come to a slightly different point of view. But at the time, I was writing a paper and for a column for a newspaper. And so I went to all of the Democratic Party leaders who were there back in 1954 when that was 1956, when that was put on the Georgia flag. And basically the most frank response that I got was, Cynthia, I asked them, are you a racist? And one of them was so honest. He said, you could just say, I was a man of my time. And so it's sort of like, it's easy for us to be in our own shoes, but we also have to be in other people's shoes if we're going to have this ability to come together. So then I go to Washington and I'm under the Democratic Party banner, but I don't want these wars. I had been catapulted because I spoke out against George Herbert Walker Bush's wars. When the wars became Democratic Party wars, Bill Clinton's wars, I was against them still. And so then that really taught me that the Democrats, in fact, in one of my concession speeches, I was one of the first victims of electronic voting machines because Georgia was the first state to actually deploy them. And I declared at that moment that electronic voting machines are a threat to U.S. national security. No one heard me at the time. People hear me now. But I was against Bill Clinton's wars, and I made that clear. And it was really at that point that I began to see that Democrat and Republican are together. And it was really crystallized for me at a committee hearing on international relations where, the issues were always high level foreign policy issues. And one of the subcommittee chairman was having a hearing, and this was going to be a very contentious hearing, bringing in the administration. And we were supposed to be battling it out over policy. And the committee chairman in front of the cameras was very antagonistic toward the one of the witnesses. But after the hearing was over, they got up and walked out together, arm in arm. And that's what let me know, hey, this is just theater. Let me dig more deeply and find out just exactly what's going on. In the email signature that I have for my emails that I send out, I have a line from actually it's a British political, based on true political events series, where the guy says, he's prime minister, he's made it up to prime minister, and he says, I fought my way to the top only to discover that it's the middle. And what I began to understand is that there are people who are way above members of Congress. There are people who are way above the elected president, and they are the ones who really call the shots. And until we deal with that, and that entity, my professor who served on my dissertation committee, Peter Dale Scott, popularized the phraseology which everyone takes for granted now, deep state. These are deep events that are born from deep politics that are carried out by members, individuals who are part of the deep state. They're not elected. They have no names. They have no faces, but they're the real power behind the throne. Once I understood that, then it was very easy for me to dissociate myself from the Democratic Party wars, as I had done previously for the Republican Party wars.
Mm. Do you feel that when we look at progressives that are in Congress right now, like AOC and the squad in general, some of us we've been very critical of them because we wanted them to go into Congress and kind of be like a leftist version of the Tea Party to push back on like Nancy Pelosi. And they're not doing that. They're now just kind of going along with the DNC, like the establishment. From your experience, because I keep saying this, I feel like, why are they so afraid? Like, what is at stake here other than being a careerist? From your experience, do you feel like there's some sort of fear in reference to their career as a politician, or do you feel like they're just trying to go along with the group?
Well, first of all, I'm a radical in that I actually try to look at the genesis of things. I try to get down to the root of what the issues are, what the causes are, where the money comes from. And so the question I would ask is, were Justice Democrats ever ours? And the answer that I come to is no, they weren't. I never had anybody start a movement with me for $20 million. I mean, it just, the kind of money that flowed through their campaigns and continues to flow through their campaigns is not something that I ever had access to. And none of the other people who went afoul of that deep state entity. And so maybe what we're looking at, or maybe what we're confusing, is manufactured dissent, as we also know about manufactured consent, but there's also manufactured dissent. And maybe that's what we're confusing.
That's a good point. I'm hearing a lot about Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Everybody seems to be pointing fingers at them and blaming them for the reason why things aren't getting done. But Glenn Greenwald brought it up, and he referred to this as the rotating villain. That if it wasn't for Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin, it doesn't matter. Somebody else would be the rotating villain. What's your feeling about that?
Well, yeah, and in fact, what we need to do is look at the performance in terms of policy of the Democratic Party. And I think they fail on so many accounts. They have failed for me on the anti-war, pro-peace ledger. They are now failing on immigration. They are failing on labor. They are failing. They just failing across the board. Failed on healthcare, and so I mean, it's a shame when you have an insurgent Republican campaign that's more leftist than the Democrats. And so, what is actually going on here? I think what is happening is that we're seeing the reality of the deep state, that the Democrats can, in fact, their platform. I just had a meeting this morning with insurgent Green Party members as well, who, as far as I'm concerned, the Green Party has the most beautiful words that have been put in a political platform that exist in the United States today. The Green Party remains ineffective, and we have to look at why it is ineffective. If we go back and look at some of the studies that were done around COINTELPRO, and not very many of them were done, but David Cunningham, I believe is the name of the academician who looked at popular FBI practices in the COINTELPRO movement to destroy organizations. And you're a Fred Hampton leftist, so you understand about the destruction of Black leadership and independent Black leadership, and the destruction of independent Black organizations. And the most favorite tool that was used by the FBI was infiltration. And so the Democrats are the political party that ran a record number of intelligence operatives on their ledger as congressional candidates. I mean, this would have changed. We supposedly have separation of powers and checks and balances built into the governance structure of our country. Well, if you infiltrate the legislative branch with executive branch operatives, what do you have? You no longer have the checks and balances and the separation of powers. So you are literally witnessing the destruction of certain features that make the U.S. governance structure unique and very special. You're looking at the destruction of it. And that's exactly what we're experiencing.
I'm curious, when you were a congresswoman, did you feel any type of pressure from, number one, the first African-American woman coming from Georgia? There's that in itself has its pressures. It's never easy being the first. It's never easy being the first. And then being radical, did you feel pressures from the Democratic Party while you were a congresswoman?
Oh, all the time, but I ignored them. I had one very, very popular member of Congress. Remember, there was no time that was more contentious for the Congressional Black Caucus than Hurricane Katrina, and what happened there with people not being rescued, people actually being intimidated, shot at as they were trying to flee to safety. All kinds of things happened there. And so the Republicans who were in the congressional majority at the time proposed a committee, a special ad hoc committee that would look into the executive branch performance or lack thereof during Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. So I went to each of my Black Caucus members and I asked them to participate because Nancy Pelosi had said, don't participate. And I'm saying, this is our issue. If we're not here for this issue, then why are we here? And so I went to them and I said, okay, let's do something. And the committee had a budget. I had one very famous congresswoman say to me, Cynthia, you just have to accept that when the leadership tell us to do something, we're going to do it. That's an exact quote. So basically, we think we have representation. And in fact, the whole history of the civil rights movement in terms of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s point of view was that it was not just that we were struggling at that time for the right to vote, but he made it clear that we were struggling for something for which to vote. And I have interpreted that as that we're in a republic, what you're struggling for, that for which to vote, is representation. And if you don't have representation, then you are irrelevant in the political system of governance in a republic. It's indirect democracy, and it's based on the ability of others to represent you. Now, I have evolved in my way of thinking because I've been exposed to way more political systems, and I believe in direct democracy and the yellow vest. I should have worn my yellow vest today, but in fact, I'm contemplating even now, how can we broaden the perspective of political activists and visionaries and the leaders for today and tomorrow. Since my time was mostly yesterday, how can we broaden that perspective to look at new ways of governance? And so part of my dissertation, I looked at what's happening in Venezuela, what was happening in Venezuela under the tenure of Hugo Chavez that made him so beloved. I was there in that crush of millions of people who were mourning his death, and which a lot of people think of as murder, and I wouldn't disagree with that. So why was he loved? It was because there were so many policy deliverables that took place on behalf of the people who had been left out. And actually, I teach this as a module in my political science course that I'll resume outside of the country, that I will resume teaching next semester. And so basically, since I like to focus on what are the components of change, change cannot occur when people are saying yes to the status quo. You have to say no to the status quo. There has to be something inside the status quo that is unacceptable. And that unacceptability has to be expressed. And one of the mandatory ways in which that unacceptability must be expressed is a public expression. And that's the beginning of having the mass movement arriving at critical mass for change. So you increase the level of dissatisfaction. Now, here's the thing. The deep state has the tools to do this anyway. They can increase the level of dissatisfaction. They can articulate a vision. They can show you what the first steps are that will look like you can actually achieve this vision. And then they are able to overcome resistance. That is the change formula, how you make change. It's, I don't want to get too much into my module here, but what we're talking about is being able to create the kind of movement that can make change and ultimately result in policy changes, because that's the area within which we have a major disagreement. Now, who is it that has to say no? It's me and you. We are the ones that, and Jacques Rancière, the French philosopher, calls it the those people who are unimportant, unseen, whose political ideas are unheard, when the finally come together and say no, we have the nucleus for a movement that can be successful and that can make change.
I know that I was reading that Ralph Nader said one time that he actually offered help to the squad, that if they needed advice, if they needed any kind of help, like someone who's kind of been through this, he offered help, and they didn't seek out that help. Why do you think that is?
Because they never belonged to us anyway. They are there for the purpose of making you, the Fred Hampton leftists, and people who think like you and me, think that we have representation, when in fact, we don't have representation. Not a single one of the 535 that are there is willing to go to the mat for principle. Now, so what is our imperative then? Our imperative is that we've got the lessons in terms of organization and mission. We've got these lessons from the 1960s, the 1950s. We've got Paulo Freire, who gave us the mechanisms of oppression and the tools for liberation in his path-breaking book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which was, I have to add quickly, based on the more path-breaking writings of Frantz Fanon. So we cannot leave out Frantz Fanon when we talk about decolonizing our political structure, our political system, and moving into something that is truly representative of the values of us, and that can take our values, it can include our values in this national conversation, because we haven't been included properly in the national conversation. But part of that also is our fault, because we have accepted face change when the need was regime change. Let me say that again. We have accepted face change when the need is still for regime change. So we have not yet said no. They have dangled people in front of us, their own puppets, who were pre-selected by them. They have dangled them in front of us, and we've said, oh yes, those are great. The moment we say no, this is the power of no. In fact, I had one student who he was so shy, and I gave this lecture about the power of no and how it's so important for us to say no. We have the right and the power to create our own vision about what our future should look like. The young man was so inspired that he lost all of his fear about giving speeches and all of that, gave a speech, went to Stanford, and came back first in an oration debate contest. So we can make the kind of change that we need to make, but we've got to change here how we go about thinking about making that change.
Well said. As a third party candidate, what were some of the things that you saw when you were running for election that were issues or problems that you could not fix?
Well, and we still haven't fixed them. There's the issue of litigation, because the third parties are third parties because no matter how popular their platforms might be, if they had the opportunity to articulate them before an audience, gaining the audience is the problem. And ballot access is the problem. So if you can't get on the ballot, then you're basically irrelevant in the political process. And if you're not going to be able to, if you have a system where money equals ability to speak to voters, then you're again locked out of the system. So there are many different blockages that exist that are really anti-democratic. And but then if we look at the original sort of foundation of our governance anyway, it was anti-democratic to start with. So we shouldn't be surprised. And maybe what we've been asking for are the wrong things, because at one point, the country, in terms of governance, the country functioned for white males who had property. It didn't function for white males who didn't have property. It did, and so we just start there, and then we go with each disfranchisement that has taken place that has, had to be corrected by a movement and a struggle. And some disfranchisement still, like, for example, people who have gotten wrapped up in the justice system that is criminal for its injustice, and then they lose their right to vote. They don't lose their citizenship, but they lose their right to vote. And so there are still problems with our system of governance that we should look at. And if we had real opposition, or we had real progressive values represented in the Congress, they would be fighting for those things. That's why I and other members of my colleagues, colleagues where I served, got into trouble, and we became former members because we went afoul of the values of the deep state, which are quite different than the values of the average ordinary person in the United States, and quite frankly, is inconsiderate of our values.
What's your opinion about this lesser of two evils?
It's still evil. And in fact, Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Report, recently deceased, my dear friend, he said that the problem of Barack Obama's presidency was that it was the more effective evil, because people actually believed in it.
That leads me to my next question. Barack Obama.
Oh, well, I've got this book actually, because we're using this particular streaming platform. I don't have all of my stuff that I normally have right next to me. I don't have it here, but there's a book written by University of Louisville, I believe, professor. It's called What's Wrong with Obama Mania. And basically his thesis is that the problem with Obama, first of all, we have to understand the background of Obama. It's a CIA family, and the grandparents were CIA. And so Barack Obama was not selected by any one of us. Barack Obama was selected by the deep state. And so because he was selected by the deep state, he's an agent of the deep state, which means he's an agent of deep state repression. And we shouldn't be surprised then that an independent country like Libya was bombed by Barack Obama and totally destroyed. And Libya practiced direct democracy.
Yeah.
So exactly what the people in France who wore the yellow vests every weekend, what they were marching for, because they said that they were sick and tired of casting a vote and people betraying them after the vote was over. So Barack Obama's function was to make you think that the elements within the deep state of the United States, the elements within the governance structure of the United States had changed, but the policies didn't change. In fact, we could say that the policies got worse, because under Barack Obama, remember, he was in the Senate when the darn housing, the bailout took place. That legislation, this is what I of course, even as a House member, I would not have had the opportunity to add the amendment. But as a senator, this is why you have to put your chess. If politics is a game of chess, and you've got your pieces on the chessboard, you got to make sure, first of all, that they're loyal to you. Politics is so serious, you can't afford to put a piece on the chessboard that's actually sleeping with the enemy. You can't afford to do that. But we've done that over and over and over and over and over for about 40 years. I'm talking about Black people now. We've done that. Barack Obama's function, according to this professor, he looked specifically at me and what happened with me. Oh, I was saying that Barack Obama could have used his power as a senator to put one sentence on the bailout bill that would have saved a whole lot of pain that came afterwards from our community. And that is, any entity that accepts $1 of bailout money shall be subjected to an independent forensic audit of how the money was used. One sentence would have changed the whole course. And this is what I'm saying. We're not actually on the playing field. We're not on the chessboard because we have not yet put our pieces on the chessboard. We don't have our players. They are not suited up for us. They're suited up by somebody else and dangled in front of us. And what the author says is that Black Hawks, he characterized me as a Black Hawk. I take that as a compliment. Black Hawks like me was shot down because Barack Obama was given the opportunity to rise. And it went just like this, because either you're going to have people rise who are uncompromising on your behalf and know why they're there in the first place, or you're going to have people who have been put there by somebody else and they trick you. And that's what Barack Obama did. And that was his whole 8 years. That's what it was about. And people who should have known better did a disservice to young people, because young people were excited. Young people were happy. And I understand that. But we also have to show young people that there's something called accountability. There's something called values and principles, that you don't just participate in the political process because you like somebody. It's not a popularity contest. Because they look good. It's not a beauty contest. Because they can articulate well. It's not a charisma contest. Politics is about power. And until we understand that we do have power, but our power is not exercised, our muscles are flabby because we're not using them all, including the most important one of those muscles, which is the gray matter up, in our heads, that will continue to be as we are, just struggling.
How does it feel to see someone like Bernie Sanders, who told us he was starting a movement in this country, which I bought into that as well? How does it feel to see him also use some of the same talking points of the Democratic Party now and make excuses for Joe Biden?
The Green Party, well, is not only making excuses for Joe Biden, he's making excuses for himself because he betrayed his own base twice.
Mm-hmm.
What's that saying? Fool me once. George W. Bush didn't get it right, and I probably won't either. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Right? And so the Green Party challenged Bernie. And in fact, one of the most iconic articles that was written about Bernie Sanders was written by the co-chair of the Georgia Green Party, Bruce Dixon, who was a co-founder of Black Agenda Report as well. And he called it immediately. He said, Bernie is sheepdogging. Bernie was sheepdogging people like you to stay under the Democratic Party tent, instead of leaving the Democratic Party and starting, a movement, or being a part of a movement that actually could do more than just face change. And Bruce Dixon saw it early on. He saw it from the very beginning. Because I served with Bernie and knew Bernie very well. I knew him. I served with him in the House and also when he was in the Senate. I knew that he was no peacemonger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that if you looked at it, so I was not impressed with his candidacy at all, because he just wasn't there when people needed him. He wasn't there. And when victims of the U.S. war machine needed him, he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
there. When victims of the Israeli war machine needed him, he wasn't there. So I wasn't so impressed. And I had been contacted by Black people in Vermont who were saying, well, we don't exist as far as Bernie is concerned. So, because I am a witness to change, I know that people can grow and people do change. And we celebrate when people do change, especially when they change for the better. And so I had hoped that Bernie would be able to change and become the better candidate for all that he was supposed to be, that he purported to be. But then also, I'm steeped in politics and I understand the reality of sheepdogging. And so basically, Bernie's purpose was just to keep people inside the Democratic tent. That's actually what Barack Obama was there for. There was a young journalist who contacted Obama's campaign very early on. And I'm just reading what Bernie knew what his job was. That's right, Leslie. And he was a sheepdog, and he's been rewarded for it, because people who wage campaigns, I can tell you, I've run so many campaigns, I can tell you that you don't end up richer after your campaign is over. You don't end up a millionaire after you run your campaign. But Bernie did twice. So we just have to understand that the leadership that we're looking for actually is going to come from us. I mean, and now it's going to come from you guys. And I just am so ready to support young people who know themselves. In the end, I think you have to know yourself. And because you know yourself, then you're able to better represent yourself and others at critical times.
Yeah, I always thought that it was strange that, like, during the 2020 Democratic primary, that Barack Obama made a phone call. And I remember saying this to, like, my friends and family too. I'm like, does no one find it strange and concerning that Obama was able to make a phone call and tell Pete Buttigieg to drop out and tell Amy Klobuchar to drop out to help Joe Biden? I was like, whether you're for Biden or not, does anyone else not find that suspect?
Yeah. Well, if you knew where Barack Obama came from, you would then also know that he has guns and missiles behind his words, if you know what I mean. It's more than just his words, and so therefore he has the ability to bring more to the table than Buttigieg. Although I understand Buttigieg has some background as well. I'm not familiar with Klobuchar's background at all, and so then if you look and say, okay, well, who's got more juice? It kind of goes that way.
Yeah, it was just, I think it was For me, it was really eye-opening. I'm like, does anybody notice he's controlling things behind the scene? He's not
Yeah.
even president anymore.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have to ask you about, since you're from Georgia,
Hmm.
when it comes to voters coming out in Georgia for Joe Biden,
Hmm.
part of me thinks it was because they were promised those $2,000 checks if they put in Warnock and all stuff. They were promised these things. Do you think 2024 that Georgia goes back to Biden again or goes back to Democrats again?
Oh, well, Georgia was stolen. I don't know about any other states, but I mean, the level of fraud, and Georgia's been that way. Like I said, I was the one that the first electronic voting machines were used against. So I've got a lot of history there. And then they compounded the digital electoral theft with the manual in terms of these absentee ballots. And I think one county alone has something like 40,000 they don't even have creases in them. Like the absentee ballot, you're supposed to fold it. You fold it twice, and then you put it in an envelope, and then you put it in another envelope, and you seal both envelopes. And the ballots weren't the ballots were have no chain of custody, and they weren't even folded. Um, so actually, I am following very closely and pulling for the Garland Favorito is a friend of mine who is the lead plaintiff in the search for election integrity. We've been fighting the fight against the electronic voting machines ever since they were introduced. Georgia was the first state to introduce them. And computer software experts came to me early on, and we had a Black man by the name of Ethan Gibbs who died mysteriously, who was an accountant, and he had open source software. He had a far superior system of tabulating the votes on a machine that was not hackable because it wasn't connected to the internet at any time, at any point along the way. And like I say, he died mysteriously, and he didn't have the money to hire lawyers, lobbyists to plead on behalf of a superior product. And so Georgia's Secretary of State at that time, which was they were Democrats, did not choose Ethan Gibbs's machine, but chose Diebold, which was run on private software. We basically have privatized our elections anyway. So one of the things that I propose is that just as jurors are average ordinary citizens, the election staff should also be average ordinary citizens who come and go as elections go. And we have a buffer between the tabulation process, the voting process, and I know it's okay. I have another interview, and so we are able to. We have a buffer between this established or establishment election crowd and what actually happens for election integrity.
Mm. How much time do you have left, Cynthia?
Not much. Let
Okay.
me see. Wait a minute. Let me check. Oh, I'm due for like right now. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm
No, no
sorry.
worries. No worries.
I'm sorry.
I know we went over, but thanks so much for coming on. This has been a great discussion.
Okay, maybe we can do it again. I'm so sorry for the abruptness.
No worries. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. I'm gonna spend I got like how much time do I have left? I have 10 minutes left. Oh, wait, nope, wait a minute. Yep, 10 minutes left. So I want to take some questions from you guys in the chat. Um, wow, powerful guest, huh? Powerful guest. I really wanted to get her on because I wanted you guys to hear and to see that some of the things that we've been telling you is we're not alone in this. um Share this interview with as many people as you can because people need to hear this. People need to know that this information is out there. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. And I thought it was really interesting too, like even talking about the squad, how like even though that's what I've been trying to tell people, just because they ran grassroots campaigns, that doesn't mean that they can't be corrupted. Just because they didn't have, corporate donors, that doesn't mean that they can't be corrupted. And I say that because I want people to understand that when people say stuff like when Kyle Kalinske says the squad's not corrupt, that's not the definition of corrupt. The definition of corrupt involves taking money. That's not true. There's actually multiple ways you can be corrupt. So just want to put that out there. They're corrupt. I'll tell you, this is what I'm saying. Like, they're corrupt. And the people who are constantly going to bat to defend for them and to be their bodyguards, so to say, their online bodyguards, you have to ask yourself, why? Why are they fighting tooth and nail, debating people online for people that don't even know they exist? Wouldn't be me. Wouldn't be me. And there's money involved. Let's be real. There's money involved. If your talking points are kind of in the middle, where you say a couple of things on the left to make you appear really left, and you say a couple of things on the right, well, they'll say it's the center. I call it the right. On the right that make you appear like you are still credible to the Biden fans, the Biden crowd. That's where the money is, you guys. The money is not on the left, like where I am. That's where the money is. The money's not even on the right now because Trump's not in office. So it's the people that are doing that center lane, that center walk. They know that's where the money is. Why do you think people's talking points changed after Bernie dropped out? Why do you think people's talking points changed after Trump lost? It's telling you guys. It's telling you guys. Jean said, Sabby, what blows me away is the way she said all those things so much as a matter of fact, and no one blinks about it. Yeah, I mean, it's different when you have that the lived experience. It's just like honestly, none of this is surprising to me. None of this is surprising to me. You have to tell yourselves like we do not know those people. We do not know the squad. We don't know Obama. We don't know Kamala Harris. Some people may, but most of us don't. We don't know them on a personal level. So who they tell us they are and who they actually are two different things. Just kind of is what it is. James Root said he is right about one thing. You have to get ranked choice voting. Yeah, the ranked choice voting that needs to happen. So there are some places in the US that do have it. I think there's one district in Maine. I have to look this up again because I don't think it's the whole state. I have to check it. There's like one district in Nebraska that has ranked choice voting, and then Maine. Those are the two I know about. But yeah, what's up, Ronwell? Partisan stuff after Trump is out. My example is the Democrats is against the jab mandate once Trump is in power. The Democrats is now for the jab mandate once Trump is out. Yeah, I mean, I saw this coming. I saw this coming. It's look, they just do this back and forth, blame the other person game. It's the red fault, it's the blue fault. It's just a back and forth thing. At the end of the day, they're both bought, and it's one corporate party. One corporate party separated by a few social issues. Because if it wasn't for abortion, if it wasn't for, it's another one that's right. Oh, healthcare. If you remove the abortion issue from the Republican Party, they have more in common than we realize. They have more in common than they realize. Even when it comes to the racial issues, people, the Dems like try to push that on Republicans, like it's Republicans who are racist. Democrats are racist too. Trust, I know. That's not a party thing. That's not something that is just one party has racism. No, no. That's right. And that's the other one. And gay marriage, LGBTQ. You take those issues away, it's easier to see how much they have in common. A lot easier. Sabby Sabs, Ralph Nader, and Richard Wolff are part of the silent generation. Yeah, so I had Richard Wolff on. Awesome person to talk to. Like, guys, if you have not listened to Professor Richard Wolff, do me a favor and listen to Richard Wolff and Ralph Nader. And I'm still trying to get Ralph Nader on. So I'm gonna continue to work on that. But yeah, Sabby, I disagree with your opinion about the money is not on the right. Billionaires would more likely fund right-wing independent media than left media. That's a good point. I didn't think about that. You're right about that. Because like Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk, yeah, that's a good point. Good point. In fact, they have had you brought that up, I think they have more money than we do on the left. Because we are broke. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that tie. I'm trying to click on Sharon's modern monetary theory. Yeah. I'm gonna see if Steve will come back on, Steve Grumbine, and maybe see if I can get Luke on as well to talk more about MMT, because it really will open up your mind and make you think about some of these things that the government has been telling us about financial matters in this country could actually just be all lies. And it's true. Um, I think everyone should get to know MMT, learn more about it. You'll learn more about this whole facade of the debt ceiling and how it's not really an issue as the government tries to say that it is. But yeah, I'm just going through some of the comments in the chat. The Robert Escobar Show. How do we unite groups like Black Lives Matter, Trump supporters, Bernie bros, anti jab, abortion activists, and all these issues while we argue about them? Nothing gets done. How do we unite them? So, again, that goes back to direct action and mutual aid. This is why I was telling people, if you take the political part out, just remove that for a second. Don't think about the fact that they're Republican. Don't think about the fact that they're Democrat. Don't think about the fact that they're independent. Just remove that and just talk about the issues, and you'll find you have more in common with them than you may realize. For example, I've talked to several people on the right who agree that everyone should have health care in this country. Something we agree on. I've talked to several people on the right who agree that we should have a living wage in this country. That's something we both agree on. And I've talked to people on the right who believe that workers in this country should not be exploited, that they should have paid vacation. We should have paid sick time. Those are things that we can fight on together regardless of political affiliation. And the way that we can do that is through direct action and mutual aid. And this is what I was trying to tell people. When you do a general strike, we were talking about this last night, you have to have a list of demands. So there's a general strike scheduled for October 15th. Some of their demands are give everybody paid paternity and maternity leave in this country. It's a damn shame in 2021, we don't even have that. Other countries have that. We don't have that. We're the wealthiest country in the world. Increase the minimum wage. I believe it was $20 on there. I think it should be more than that. Those are things that you can demand. And I know everybody can't afford to leave their job, but we can afford to stop buying from some of these people. You got to hit Amazon, you got to hit Walmart. I don't have to buy from Amazon. And I was so used to buying things from Amazon. So if I can do it, and it may not be easy, it may mean that you may have to go a little bit further down the road to purchase things. It may mean that, yes, you're not getting things sent to your house all the time. I used to have Amazon boxes just lined up at the door when I got home from work, you guys. I don't have that no more. I really want people to support mom and pop businesses if they can. Like, go to your mom and pop places. And here's a perfect example, especially for the men in the chat. Well, women too. But let's be real. Like, usually when I go to this place, there aren't many of us women there. But it's all right. Hardware stores. There's a hardware store that is down the street from me, and there's a Home Depot that's down the street from me. It is really easy to go to the Home Depot because that's a one-stop shop. You can get hardware goods there, but there's other things that you can get there as well. Gardening supplies, all that fun stuff. Hand sanitizer, dish soap. They have a lot of stuff at Home Depot. It's not just like, housing stuff. But one of the things that my husband pointed out to me is he actually makes an effort to go to the local hardware store instead of going to the Home Depot, even though Home Depot was more convenient. Because that hardware store, that's a family-owned business. It's local. You're supporting a local business. So try to do that, you guys. Try to do that. I know it's more convenient to go to the Home Depot. We go to some of the comments in the chat, and then I am going to head out. Right, Frank and Kitten. It's about planning ahead and getting used to it. We are used to immediate gratification with all the conveniences and technology. Yeah, and people forget this sometimes. Like, guys, there was a time when there was no internet. There was a time when there was no Amazon. I didn't grow up with Amazon. I didn't do a lot of online stuff. A lot of on. I'm sorry, not the notary. Sabs pushing me out of my comfort zone again. Yeah, guys, come on. We can go to the local mom and pop places if you can. And again, that may mean that it might cost a little bit more. But see, this is how these big businesses, this is how they get us. They're like, let's make our stuff really cheap. But sometimes products that are cheaper aren't the best quality either. Several things I've gotten from Walmart that did not last past a month fell apart. Sabby, could you elaborate on the strikes going on in your state that you were discussing with Jimmy Dore the other day? I missed most of it. Oh, sure. So the state troopers in Massachusetts, the union, they basically came forth and said that they are going to resign because of the jab mandate. They don't agree with the mandate. I don't agree with the mandate. I mean, I agree with if you want to get it, then get it. But forcing people to do it, I find that to be feel like that takes away your freedom, So that is one of the things that's going on. The other issue that we have going on is the school bus drivers. So some of the school bus drivers have decided, they're like, look, I'm not working under these conditions. And this kind of thing is happening across the country where people are like, I'm not going to work under these conditions. You're going to make me get something that I don't want to get. And then you're going to tell me that I have to work in this environment on a crowded bus. They have to have on the mask. And so some people are just like, no, it's not worth all that to me. Plus, you don't pay me enough anyway. Plus, my benefits suck. So peace out. So those are some of the things that are happening. I'm seeing people quit, like even like at my job, I'm seeing people quit and not even have a job lined up. And I want to tell you, like, you can't get unemployment here if you just quit. You can only get it if like, you're fired. But I'm seeing people just quit and not even have a job lined up. That's how bad it's getting, ladies and gentlemen. People are like, peace, I am out. That's a good point, Jesus. Things aren't supposed to last today because if they did, you wouldn't continuously need to purchase it again. Mm. You know what my parents told me? My parents told me back in the day when they were growing up, they said back then when you bought like furniture for your apartment, your house, it actually lasts for a long time. Like when my parents bought like a living room set or like a bedroom set, it was built to last. It lasts for years. The quality was so much better. You go to the furniture store now, man, you knock on, just tap on a table in the furniture store, a dining table, coffee table. You can feel how cheap it is, how cheaply made it is. But that's what my parents were saying. Like back then. Shout out to Escobar Show for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you, Sab. What's the root cause of these issues? We all need to agree and ask what is the one thing that all these different groups can agree on? I think the one thing we can all agree on is labor. That's a big one because people want to get paid for their labor. They want to be compensated for their labor, but they also want to be treated fairly when it comes to labor. That's a big one. That's why I tell people, and Jimmy Dore mentioned this when he was on as well, we need a massive labor uprising because that's the one thing that we all have to deal with. And if we're not being paid fairly, if we're not being compensated fairly for our work, and we're being forced to work longer hours with less staff, this is happening across the country. There's less staff now. People are quitting. And instead of them filling those positions, they're choosing to just dump that work on the people who are still left at the job. It's happening everywhere. I've been talking to people about it. I've had to deal with this myself. And so you have to talk about the labor because that is the one thing that we all have in common. Oh, Indy left. That's so sweet. If there's any justice in this world, Sabby Sabs is on her way to stardom. Oh, that's so sweet. I gotta like fight for the people, man. I just can't stand these talking points anymore where people just go along with they're telling you that the squad's doing a good job. They're telling you Joe Biden's doing a good job. And these are people on the left who I really respected, used to really respect. Now I see they're just following the money trail too. So got to tell people what's really going on. Got to tell people what's really going on because some people have sold out. They left us a long time ago. And some people left us this year. So when you see the TYTs of the world and you see them tell us what would happen with force the vote and they give us incorrect information. And then after the force the vote happened and didn't work out, then they come back and tell you that they said the wrong information, that what they said was incorrect. Come on. Come on. They're going where the money is. And some of the people that you watch that you think are independent aren't really independent. Sabby, have you ever seen Cynthia ask Rumsfield who has the contracts? I believe I saw a clip of that. Believe I saw a clip of that. But I have to actually get going myself, you guys. Um, I'm sorry, it's a Saturday morning. So I'm just like, I'm not used to going on in the morning. You guys usually see me after I've had a crazy, crazy long day, and I've sat through like hour and a half of traffic, just sitting there and not moving. So it's so different coming on in the morning because nothing has happened yet. Like nothing in my life has happened yet. I literally woke up and I'm here. So absolutely. TYT apparently thinks they think you're funded by Jimmy and Kyle. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That is funny, Indy. That is funny. Oh man, that's something else. All right, guys. You know how we do this. Have a good night. No, see that don't work right now because it's the morning. What just happened? Have a good morning. Keep up. Nope, that don't rhyme. That don't work. That don't work. Nope. Well, this is different. Have a good day. Think about what I say.